Welcome back to Clear the Mechanism with your host, Coach Ryan Vondercheck. Today, I have a very special one, someone that I'm very, very privileged to be able to have a conversation with. It's someone who I've kind of stumbled upon as of late, but it's someone who, when he speaks, his words hold a lot of weight, and I'm very blessed for the opportunity. Today, we have the one and only Butch Chaffin. Butch, how's it going today?
Magnificent. It's been a great day, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love just getting on and talking with other coaches, and if I've got something they can have, uh, you know, I'm all about it.
No, absolutely. And I wanted to kind of let you in on a little secret. It's not actually just you and me. We actually have a co-host. Um, I didn't know if you knew this, but his name was Mr. Smiley, Coach Jager himself. And he goes, he was laughing at my co-host. So that's pretty funny because every time you look at Smiley, you can't be upset anymore, which is really, really cool. So, but no, that's awesome. So from a really, really young age, you kind of knew that coaching was kind of your path. I believe you said from the age of 9.
Yeah.
When all that kind of got it started, what did you kind of notice that was leading you towards that calling, even though that you were still playing the game of baseball yourself?
I don't know. You know, I, uh, I was going to be an engineer, so I think, I had the brain of an engineer at an early age, and it really bothered me when, I'd play with blocks and it was uneven or something like that, and I'd build something. I wanted it to be, symmetrical, and I wanted it to stand up. Uh, I think I was ADHD as a kid and obsessive compulsive, but if you're ADHD, they just spanked you, and if you're obsessive compulsive, they just kind of moved on and tried not to notice it. But when I was in Little League, I was fascinated by the strategy of it, how players, how evenly they were spaced out to cover ground, and I remember my Little League coach. He was a Vietnam vet, and he dumped out that green Vietnam bag, and it had all the equipment and the balls, and the last thing to fall out were shin guards, and I dove on those things. Like they were a hand grenade, and I was trying to save somebody, and I said, "These are mine." And I didn't even know what they were, and strapped them on, and they put me behind the plate, and I, I mean, I was really blessed because, as a catcher, you get to see the whole field, and I was 9 years old, moving guys around on defense, and I'd question the coach, who was a great guy. Um, and he never lost his patience with us. He smoked those cigars with a plastic tip, and he drove a Trans Am, and played Black Sabbath when he pulled up into the parking lot. He was a real life Buttermaker from Bad News Bears. And I remember having a conversation about lineup construction, I thought we'd be better if we put the fast guys at the front and the slow guys in the back, and he did it, and we won a game, and he kept asking me questions, and I was hooked. He'd say, "Hey, why don't you plan the next practice?" And I'd link it all together. I spent hours planning little league practices as a 9-year-old, and I don't know. I was just fascinated with it, and I fought it for a long time. And I go to college, and I'm taking those engineering classes, and I thought it was pretty cool because we'd mix cement and then try to break it and see how strong it was. And I'd look around the room, and I just finally came to realization that I wouldn't like these guys. That I really enjoyed being around people, and as an engineer, I'd be spending a lot of time doing math and being alone. And it just kind of led me to education. And, I just started my 40th year in the classroom. I teach psychology and sociology, and I get to be around young people every day. And I think it's keeping me young.
It's so awesome to really take a step back and understand the relationships that we're able to build as a coach. And some of our relationships, when we do kind of take that coach as well as kind of that teacher route, some of our actual students have a little bit more of an impact than they kind of do when they're players for us as well. So I'm sure like being able to navigate that between the two, I'm sure that's really a truly a blessing to be able to have both of those spectrums within the classroom and then also on the field as well.
Absolutely, 100%. A relationship's a relationship. A girl in class today, a girl in class today, God love her, she told me I had her grandmother in class. And it was my first year teaching, and I was a young college student. I was a young graduate from college, and I was like 22 years old, and started teaching. And this girl was probably 19, and she goes, "You have my grandmother in class," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing here?"
So within all those relationships that we're able to build, not only from us as teachers, like when we're students of the game, there's still so many people that we're able to be impacted by. For yourself, it's guys like Jackie Rivas and Bill Gardner and how David Mays, through all those different guys who were able to impact you and how you go about your business now. Can you give me just a little snippet of each of their importance in not only the kind of the way that you were able to go into coaching, but just your life in general?
Uh, yeah, you mentioned some really impactful people and some great coaches. And my high school coach, he was from Detroit, and he's a tough guy, man, little guy. Always had a chip on his shoulder, and he played professional baseball in the Washington Senators organization. And man, it was the first time I saw a coach actually like coach, and he was hard on us, and he pushed us, and man, we were doing mental training before that was a thing. And so, you know, I played, and he called me in, and I'll never forget this. He called me in and he said, I just want you to know you've been elected captain. And he said it was a unanimous vote. Everybody on the team, they just voted for you. And so I mean, there was impact there, and then I batted fourth on my high school team, and it was a really good team. And I would ask myself all the time, why am I batting fourth? And I asked him, I said, Coach, why am I batting cleanup? He said, well, I'm trying to hide you in the middle of the order. So I'm probably the only cleanup guy that was being hidden in the lineup. And then so I get after it pretty good and work on my game, um, and I was a good high school player, because they throw a lot of fastballs. And for some reason, I was always on time to a lot of fastballs. And the harder they threw it, the easier it was for me. And so, I put some numbers up. I go to junior college and I played for Jackie Revis. And I was a freshman in college and took coaching baseball as a PE class. And we had to write playbooks and design bunt defenses and first and third. And that kind of got me hooked on that kind of thing. And then my first junior college dropped football. So we got free transfers and our scholarships transferred. And I went to Walter State, and I was on the front end of what now is a junior college dynasty. And I get there, and our catcher and first baseman are all Americans. And my coach is like, man, I love you, but you're not going to play much in front of those two. And so they made me a drop down Kent Tekulve, Dan Quisenberry type pitcher. And I went through all the pitching drills and through bullpens. And I look back, and man, I'm telling you, it's a God thing, because here I was as a little leaguer. I was a catcher, but I also got to play some first base and some third base. You know how little league is. They move you around, play second base. I get in high school, and I get to play all over the place. I was like the utility guy. I started every game, but I never started 2 games in a row in the same spot. And so I'm in junior college. I become a pitcher, and somebody saw something. And David Mays at Tennessee Tech, he allowed me to come and gave me a little money to go to school. And looking back, I got to play all the positions, and I wouldn't have known anything about pitching if I hadn't been a pitcher. So when I tell guys stuff, about hitting, I was a hitter. And when I tell them about pitching, I was a pitcher. And when I tell them about defense, I was a defender. And at one time, I could run a little bit. so I could play in the outfield, and did that and steal some bases and do some stuff. And I mean, it was just a blessing that everywhere I ended up, I got to see something new and I got to learn from somebody. And, I've been a baseball coach. When I was 17 years old, a junior in high school, I convinced two of my best friends to coach a little league team with me. And I said, give me the worst team in it. And the league president was like, you're too young to coach, blah, blah, blah. I said, please. And I begged and begged and begged. I went to his house and talked to him on his front porch. And I convinced him that, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. I said, give me the worst team. And he gave me a team that the year before was 0-12. And we ended up winning the league the next year because we just taught them how to throw and catch. And we could play defense. And that kind of always stuck with me. If you want to improve your chances of winning and you want to do it quickly, improve throw, catch, and defense, and you'll win more games.
That really reminds me of a personal story. I think I was a sophomore in college, and I came back to a small town because I was born and raised in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So a small town in Anamosa, Iowa, which about 35 minutes down the road or so from the Field of Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there, and the only spot that they had for my first coaching gig was freshman. So I started with the freshmen,
Mm-hmm.
but it was such a small school that you started with the eighth graders. So almost your whole freshman team was eighth graders.
Mm-hmm.
And all I remember from that first year was, man, there's not much that we could do right, but every day was like, okay, they're getting a little better and a little better and a little better. And when you really reflect on that, you're like, okay, it's going to eventually, everything's going to line up and you're going to get there. You just don't know when that's going to be. So our first year we were 1-22, and then our second year we were, I believe it was 16 and 8 or something like that. And it was the same group of kids other than like two kids. And you reflect on that and you're like, well, those two kids aren't the difference maker.
Right.
So everything kind of using it as compound interest and being able to really get to know the kids and have them again and again. It's like, that's truly what's propelling them in that direction. And now them being at the varsity level and them still having that type of success, you can be like, okay, we built that groundwork to be able to let them now be able to grow and understand what that growth actually meant. And I know you've had a lot of stories like that for yourself as well, and through many different levels that you've been able to coach. Through all those different levels, you ended, because I think it was God's calling for you to go back to high school. And even though that you do all these really, really special and gifted things on the side other than high school, what do you think brought you back into, hey, I am a high school coach first?
I think, I think coaching is addictive. If you do it right, you can't get enough of it. And you think about it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I still wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'll come to the desk and, I'll get out of bed, try not to bother my wife. And I'll come to the desk if I have an idea or a theory that, I want to work, and I'll write down notes and stuff like that. So I think it's addictive. And, to kind of answer your question, I love the high school age, the 14 to 18. Plus, you can mold them. Many times, you're the expert, you're the authority, so they don't get a lot of coaching from other, avenues. And I love the fact that I can take a kid and make a couple adjustments, and he can see results, and it's addictive. Um, I don't do a lot of lessons. I just don't. I just I don't I if I walk up, and I'm going to do a lesson with you, and you seem kind of disinterested or something like that. I've run into that a couple times, and I'm like, man, I'm just wasting my time. But I do a lesson with a 14-year-old kid, and he's a big kid. He's a tight end on his He's a freshman now, and he's going to be like the starting tight end on his varsity team. So he's got what I look for. He's a big, strong, physical kid, and man, just Sunday, he lives about 45 minutes from me, and um, I drove to him, and he's got a place where he hits. It's really cool. It's an old man who's taken part of his barn and like enclosed it and put a batting cage in there and put turf on the floor. And I'll go in there and work with him, and we'll make one or two adjustments. And this past week, we made a couple adjustments, and it's been a slow burn. I told him I've got a plan, and I'll go up there about once every other month. And we added a couple things, and he sent me film the next day, and he was like, in my first round of BP on the field, hit 3 of 5 out, and I've never hit a ball out. And he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark, out of a high school field, and that he's going to play on. And I can feel the excitement, when he talks to me on the phone. And I told my wife, I came home and told her, I said, we made one adjustment and this kid he's taken off. And I was super excited. I couldn't, she doesn't care. She doesn't know anything about baseball other than, I'm a coach, and she's had to sit through games and watch. She knows more than she says. But she was like, that's awesome. Having that impact. So I like that. I like that age level, and I've always worked, with pretty much that age level. Um, and the kids will talk. They're goofy. I was a scout for the college national team the last 2 years, and I got to go to camp with them. And college guys are goofy too. They just have a lot more skill and can do things. I watched the kid spill Gatorade all over the front of his jersey and then go out and throw 97 mile an hour with an 86 mile an hour hammer slider. And I was like, that's pretty incredible.
At the end of the day, and this is something that I learned from a guy that I hold very, very high, not only from a relationship standpoint in my life, but just from a God-fearing man perspective as well. Life is relationships, the rest is just details. And it's something that he lives by, and it's something that he's ingrained in my head, and it's very simplistic at the very forefront, but at the same time, if you really really think about it, it's like that holds so much weight. And it's the same thing in coaching. It's like that's why I love being able to do this. That's why I love being able to talk to
Yeah,
individuals like yourself who have been through a lot of these different things and just soak it up like a sponge. I know it's probably, I don't know if Sheets has ever referred to you directly as this, but I know you love and have heard his different analogies of he loves wrinkles, he loves gray hair, and he really gravitates towards that. And when
hmm
he kind of told me that, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm the same way. I've just never thought about it in that from that lens and from that perspective. And that's the beautiful piece of this as well, is like you learn so many different perspectives. Everyone sees the game completely different. It's how do they see it, and how are you able to relate that to yourself and then share that with the people that are around you, not only the people that you're impacting but also your loved ones. And do you go about your life in a different way after one little thing is said? And it's the same thing when we coach. Like, as much as I do, everyone's home that it's not always all sunshines and rainbows, because that's just not what life is.
sure.
But in a way, we can take them away from the field and we can let them know, hey, you're a person before you're a player. And I'm
Absolutely.
sure you have so many stories within that. And I'm sure if we really dive into it, I'm sure that we could get really, really deep and probably even pretty emotional on this topic. Is like, at the forefront, we're coaches, but at the end of the day, how I look at it is we have a master's degree in relationships. And when we keep that as kind of our main pillar throughout our life, and I know it's something that myself, I hold very near and dear to my heart. I know as a head coach, eventually I would like over 500 wins. I know that from a relationship perspective, I would love that. And a, a gentleman by the name of Jake Banwart, he's kind of an infield guru, and he's kind of been able to say a lot of his wisdom, not only on my podcast, but just in general. how he looks at everything as like a hand. And so if I look at that, that's my thumb. That's everyone thinks about that as the most important piece. It's probably just there. I would like to attend over 300 of my players' weddings in some way, shape, or form. I would like to be able to impact over 100,000 people, maybe not even just through the game, but just through the game of life. I want to have a very, very fruitful relationship with my wife because I know that she's going to understand the struggles and the grind of what it takes to be a coach, but she understands the ultimate goal of giving back. And that's the gifts that God has given me. And at the end of the day, I want to be a very, very loving and supportive son of Jesus Christ and be able to go about my life in a way that I know I'm giving back, but I know there's a higher purpose. And I know that I'm sure maybe breaking it down into those different pillars, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you're able to resonate with that as well.
Oh, 100%. You know, you mentioned Sheets. Sheets is 20 years younger than I am, and he's my best friend. I talk with him every day. We text. We talk on the phone every day, and he's had impact on me, and he's walked me through some stuff. And I like to think I know I've like walked him through some stuff, and he'll call me for advice, and I'll ask for his perspective and advice. And yeah, you can't get away from it. If you coach and you don't like other coaches, I probably won't like you. And Sheets is a lot like me. We can be very polarizing in the fact that you either like us or you don't. And if you don't like me, I don't have bad things to say about you. I'm not even aware you're there. And, he's the same way. And, he's got this bravado about him. He's extremely confident. He's a great speaker. And, man, he'll spit nuggets all the time. And, I think that's a God thing too. And, my wife's a super Christian woman, and she's taught me so much. I told her today in a text, her birthday's coming up, and I sent her a text that was a husband wife kind of text, and I said, "You saved my life." And she's like, "I didn't save your life. God saved your life." And I'm like, "Well, you were talking to God, and she's made me a better person." And you're a coach, and you got to develop thick skin and become bulletproof, and you got to do it the right way. And there's this myth about relationships that I think, and I've watched, and I see a lot of young coaches, they'll coach for 3 years and then they get out. They just don't want to do it anymore. They can't take it. Somebody said something bad about them, and, they bailed on it. I think a lot of younger coaches, they hear someone my age, they hear Sheets, they hear Allen, Jager, and they hear coaches, they hear us talk about, yeah, I've been in weddings and things like that. Well, I've gone to players' funerals. And, you look around the room at one of your former players' funerals, and you see everybody that played with him. And you see, the people that he had in his life that cared about him. And I think there's a myth about relationships. A lot of younger coaches, they get in it for the right reasons, and they want that relationship right now. And I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't say, but um, you're a baseball coach. Your players, when you walk in, they want to trust you if you know baseball, and if you can help them on the baseball field, that's a path, uh, to get to their heart. And you got to capture a player's heart. And you know, a lot of times, many times a week, I think about players I couldn't reach. When I should be thinking about players that I did reach, and these relationships. It takes time. It's just like building a good team. Sometimes it takes time, and you can't just skip like into a 16-year-old sophomore, junior, whatever, and tell him you want to come to his wedding. He's like, "What are you talking about? Just teach me baseball." And if you teach him baseball, you build trust, and that relationship piece, it'll come years later. I have, like I said, I've been coaching for over 40 years, and you start thinking about that. I've coached guys that were 55, 57 years old, and I was a kid too, and I thought I knew. but I was trying, and some of them trusted me and some of them didn't. And now I have a relationship with men who, you know, they have grown children, and that's when the relationship comes. You can't get it on the front end. You got to wait till the back end.
Because it's like a dance. You got to follow your partner. And then if you're able to have that relationship where you're able to follow it as one and understand that that connection is that valuable and it's from both sides,
Right.
then that's when things are going to start really striving. But as you kind of mentioned, it's like in the beginning, it's like, okay, you're my baseball coach. Why are you trying to lay into me all these different types of things? I just want to know the X's and the O's. And, but, um, a guy that I'm able to kind of reflect on is Coach Bo at the 80/20 podcast. And he's like, in the beginning, I was all about the X's and the O's. And I know a really big quote for Coach Sheets as well is the first 10 years were for me. The rest of my coaching career was for everyone else. And
Exactly.
he said that was probably something that I didn't really learn in the beginning. So I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, probably something that you said connected with him and was able to kind of really have him understand, okay, this is our why. Like the
Yeah.
wins are awesome.
Yeah.
You already know that you're a fantastic coach. Are you a fantastic baseball coach or are you a fantastic life coach? And how are we reflecting on those types of relationships? And are we truly living them out or are we just leaving them at the surface level?
Mhm. Right.
And and within that, I think that's something that through all these different conversations that I've heard you had on Jimmy's podcast and on Ken's podcast, and I know those are very good friends of yours and they're good friends of mine now. The beautiful thing about it is when you're able to connect with people through a specific niche per se and things like that,
Right.
age is just a number.
Right.
And it's actually what we're able to kind of describe to one another that's what's going to stick with us. Like I know that after this I'm sure we'll have so many conversations and I'll be incredibly blessed for absolutely every one of those. And but it's at the end of the day it's that age gap that you were kind of saying with Coach Sheets, but it doesn't matter because the impact is what really matters. And I think that's with how you've kind of been able to describe it in so many podcasts. I think that's something that you do incredibly well. And I think there's so many stories that you've been able to go through and have to live out to be able to continue to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's just something that you've always shared well. And I just feel like that's things that make you who you are and why people are able to describe you in the lights that you deserve to be described in.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. You know, it's not accidental. I try to be very intentional. I'm a people person. I love people. I love all kinds of people. And if you're a coach and you're for kids and you're making, uh, you know, people better, you're going to get a better player. And, you know, I'm your biggest fan. And, you know, I've said this 1,000 times. Um, you know, I don't make friends, I collect people. And, you know, my grandmother used to say things like that, collect people, because you never know when you need them. So I've always, my whole life, I've been trying to be, you know, very intentional to go out of my way. I'm not bashful. You know, I'll walk up to people if I'm, you know, I see them and I think I like them, I'm going to walk up and I'm going to jump into the conversation and collect them. And I'll never forget this. My father, he he was a warrior and he was also an engineer. He was a petroleum engineer, you know, and he was all over the country, out of the country 7 months, 8 months out of the year working. And I got really sad one time and I told my mom, I was like, Dad's never here. All the other dads get to see their kids play little league and high school. And boy, my mom, she fixed me quick. And she said, listen, your dad, he's providing so you can have the best glove, best equipment you don't want for anything. And I was like, whoa. My dad didn't see me play a game until I was a sophomore in college. And like no little league, no high school. My mom, she was an emergency room nurse and she worked. She went into work at 6 o'clock and got off at 6 in the morning. My sisters were out of the house and married. So a lot of times, I'm 10, 11, 12, 13 years old at home by myself all night. But my mom would come in her nursing uniform. She was old school, wore the white and the hat and the whole 9 yards. And she'd stay for like the first one or two at bats in high school, and then she'd go to work. And that's kind of how I grew up. I wouldn't, I was playing for my teammates because that's who was there. And she told me in Little League, she said, I don't care how you play, I don't care how many hits you get. You be the best teammate they've ever seen. And I carried that through my whole life. And I was cut in high school my first year, and I was captain. My senior year, I go to junior college, and I'm a captain my freshman year, a freshman captain. I go to a different junior college my sophomore year, and I don't know a lot of those guys. I played against them, and I was a captain there. And then I go to another school, my first year at that school, and every year I was at Tennessee Tech, I was a captain. And it's my greatest accomplishment outside of my wife, children, and grandchildren. Was being, the captain. And man, I love that role. And I had a coach tell me, he said, you're really good at it. I was the guy, if I wasn't playing, I was meeting them when they were coming off the field, handing pitcher cups of water and going over and handing the catcher water. I had it all poured from the cooler. And man, I was for them. I didn't know I was supposed to be against them. I was for the guys that played my position because that's where I stood all day. I stood with them and I did drills with them, and I was in their BP group. And you know, I I I think the relationship piece. I miss being a player, but I love being a coach. I think the rush from being a coach when you pull strategy and it works. Uh, I think it's more than hitting a double in the gap to drive somebody in. The feeling is even more so when you're a coach and you do something and you put somebody else in a position to be successful. That, that hits me right in the heart, and I love that. And I'll get misty eyed or something like that. I've cried in the huddle after wins because I was so proud of my guys because we worked on it in practice and then they did it in the game and they got good results. And I'm like, guys, man, that's huge, you know? So, yeah, is what it is.
It's a respect factor that the guys have for you too. And if it wasn't where our players did respect us, it would be incredibly difficult to open up in that type of way and be emotional. And so a lot of people from the outside looking in are like, "Oh, he's just a crybaby." No, like they're pulling at the heartstrings, and if you didn't go through that struggle with those guys and were able to technically meet them in the trenches, even though it's nowhere close to the trenches that a lot of people think about, it's mental warfare trenches.
Sure.
And once we're able to look at it from that lens, it's like, okay, that's when we're going to get those results. And when I'm a very emotional guy myself, and being younger and playing with half of them that I was actually coaching with a couple years prior, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now it feels completely different. But
Sure.
but I'm not going to change who I am, and I'm not going to change my identity because obviously I find it through Jesus himself, but at the same time, I was a left-handed pitcher, so I did some things a little different, and we got to respect those differences. So
Sure.
now, as a coach, we're not going to then become cookie cutter when we know we wouldn't have been successful in that same lens. And from a mental perspective, you have a lot of quote unquote Butchisms, however you want to talk about them, right? Clear thought, clear talk, clear task. At its simplest form, how would you break that down?
That's from James Kerr's book Legacy, which I think is the greatest, one of the best coaching books out there. And if you're a coach and you haven't read Legacy, you've really missed out. And in the book, it's about the All Blacks, the rugby team, the All Blacks. And it's just, that's when I first latched on. I read that book years ago, and clear thought, clear talk, clear task. That just screams at me. And I've been trying to tell everybody this: simple is a skill. If you can make hard concepts simple, that's a skill. Not everybody can do that. And in the book, it talks about how small adjustments can yield big results, and you got to bring energy daily, and you're chasing improvement, not perfection. And, it's one of the best coaching books out there. And after I read that, man, I was twice the coach I was before I read it. And I read it, and then I read it again, and I underlined things and highlighted things. And I still have that book. But man, I got after it so much in that book, I had to go buy another copy that wasn't all marked up, had notes in the margins. But clear thought, clear talk, clear task. It's so simple, but there's so much to it. Your thoughts, you need to have clear thoughts. Don't clutter your mind. Your talk, when you speak, you say what you need to say and you stop. You just don't go on. And, I've watched other coaches, and there's some things that other coaches, I'm not supposed to watch them, but I'm coaching against the other coach, and my players are playing against their players. That's how I've always looked at that. And I've watched other coaches do things like after a game, take their team out to the outfield and make them get on a knee like they're subservient to you, and put them on a knee and then talk to them for like 30 minutes. Um, you know, Teenagers, they have the brain of a goldfish, 8 seconds and they're done. And, they're just out there and they're venting on them to make themselves feel good, but they have an audience. And, Butch Thompson, he said something years ago, and Butch Thompson said, you have to drive that car. Why would you stab your own car's tires? And that's what you do when you like verbally break guys down. You're just stabbing the car you got to drive the next day. Why would you do that? And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a great way to put it, So, yeah, I think, if you explain the task and you're simple with it and you use the right words, I think a lot of coaches are guilty of not using the right words. You got to search for the words, and like words are weapons, and you say the wrong word, you can deflate somebody. And, a lot of times you're browbeating people when they do something wrong to make yourself feel better. And I think you got to find the right words. Words are, they're bullets, they're ammo, they're weapons. And boy, you better have a really good vocabulary, and I can remember I wanted to say something bad to somebody. So I just draw up an SAT word that they had no idea what it meant. It made me feel good, and they had no idea what it meant. So they walked away, and they weren't damaged sometimes. But yeah, Kerr's book, Legacy, every good coach I know, I've seen it on their desk.
No, that's super cool. I definitely wrote that one down, and you're not the first person to kind of touch on that book, and so it's cool that even though we're in a specific sport, just the idea of strategy and being a good person and understanding one another, those books sometimes connect more than the autobiographies of all these coaches that
Sure.
that we respect and different things like that. So with that kind of being said, in our profession, we are built off of making relationships with one another.
Mhm.
And I know you used a word that you very much enjoy that I have never heard until you said it on Jimbo's podcast. The importance of Necton brothers
Nectons.
and Nectons. Okay.
Yep.
Necton brothers. And I understand that it's kind of a group of like-minded coaches, and you kind of bring in different people within those groups to be able to, hey, this guy's this personality, and obviously Sheets is an animal of all his own, and then you have all these different people, but it all makes up this beautiful melting pot
Yeah.
of or culmination of people who are just very like-minded, but it's in all these different ways, and it's the same thing within a team. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit, on the importance on hey, if you have this group of coaches that you're really, really close with and you want to continue to grow with, how would you kind of get started within that?
I think all coaches need a coaching circle. We do WhatsApp. We used to do like a couple different platforms. We could send videos and stuff like that. And we just settled on WhatsApp and we'll put a video in WhatsApp. And it's probably got about 13, 14 guys and from all over the country. It's got college guys, high school guys. It's got a little bit of everything. And, we've grown so close over this, and it started at ABCA, one of those midnight sessions, and the restaurant that's closed down, and we were just kind of sitting there, and somebody'd walk up and go, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We're just sitting here talking. Do you mind if I sit down and talk?" And then all of a sudden, that guy years later is one of your best friends, and it started out the Nekton group. A Nekton is anything that swims against the current like a shark is a nekton. Um, so I think Wes Brooks named it that. We had shirts, we got shirts and all kinds of stuff, but and the shirt has a shark on it. But yeah, it started out baseball. Hey, how do you guys push bunt? How do you push bunt? How do you like delay steals? One slide, two slides, what are you keying off of? And it grew into, I'll be honest with you, we talk about baseball. Baseball's in it every day, but it's basically, we just rip on each other and have a good time. And, you know, I, as Sheets would say, this Neckton group, I'd stab somebody in the face for every one of these guys. But yeah, they're family. And coming from a guy, I have two older sisters. I don't have any brothers, but I have my Nectons now, and I'm not kidding. I've driven I've driven hundreds of miles to get to a Necton whose child was having surgery or something like that. It's supported. When one person in the group hurts, we all hurt. And, somebody will go, God, I had a parent tell my principal today that I was the worst coach and I should be fired. And, we'll circle up and have a pep rally for that guy. But yeah, every coach needs a coaching group. They need a support group. And when I'm on the WhatsApp with the Nectons, I can almost envision everybody sitting in a chair in a circle, just throwing out topics and making comments.
No, that's super cool. And I'm just curious, this question kind of popped into my head. Who would you say within your Necktie group is the class clown?
Everybody is. They call me the Godfather because I'm the oldest one. Sheets literally is ruthless and will carve somebody up. If somebody posts something dumb, he will go, there's no like dancing around the ring, throw a jab to feel the other. Sheets just goes right for the vein in the neck, and everybody will send back ha 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 or gif or something like that. But we have every type of personality in the group, but we're all the same. You better have thick skin, be able to take a joke because, we're going to hammer on you. We have one guy in our group. Sometimes I feel sorry because everybody will gang up on him, but he's so good at handling it and he'll send something back to shut it down. It's just like he's the uncle. We got a guy in our group that's kind of like the uncle of the group. There's a mama in the group. There's crazy cousins in the group, but every coach needs a circle. And if you don't have a circle, start small, pick up one or two. I think the last guy we picked up was about 3 or 4 years ago, Eric Casada. He's been an assistant on the 12U national team. And he's a high school coach, young guy, high school coach in Arizona. And he's just so bright and he's witty. And, we brought him into the group and he's added so much to it because, he has that youth and he fit right in perfectly. I think he's the last guy we added to the group, though.
No, that's the beautiful piece about it too is all these different people, and you're bringing them in, and they have all these different walks of life. They look at the game in all these different ways. And someone who you've mentioned multiple times and is really turning into a very, very close friend of mine as well. And I'm very, very blessed to be able to have the relationship and continue to build that relationship with Coach Sheets. Can you just touch on, without going into, because I know how much he means to you and vice versa, just that relationship between the two of you guys?
Oh, he's a brother that's 20 years younger than me. And if I had a brother, if I could pick someone to be my brother, I'd pick somebody that's dynamic like him. He's full of energy. He's full of spark. He says what he means. It's very transparent. Uh, he, he can be cutting in private, but guy has the biggest heart I've ever seen in my life. And I think personally, and I've been around a little bit, I think he's the best base running instructor on the planet. And when he talks about base running, those baby blues light up, and, you know, there's no doubt in his mind he's doing exactly what he needs to do. And I've learned so much from him. He's kind of drugged me into the modern world, but yeah, I have nothing but good things, and we could talk all night about Sheets.
No, he's a very, very special human being, and there's a lot of people in I know your circle, his circle, turning into my circle, and it's really, really cool to kind of get to see that on all these different platforms
Right.
as well. Another Butchism per se is the game knows.
Absolutely.
And I know that if you broke it down into the real existence of who you are, I know that's one of your pillars. How do you keep that phrase honest within a team while still say, hey, we're going to be incredibly competitive, but even when we lose, we still need to keep this at the forefront?
Uh, I don't think losing's fatal. It can be final. If you lose the last game, it can be final, but it's not fatal. And golly, I have the utmost respect for the game, and I've seen it all over the world. I've seen, I see people disrespect it, and it angers me. I think baseball has a real life. It has a heartbeat. It breathes. It has a soul, and you need to be good to it. And in a lot of ways, it's like God. It may delay, but it's not going to deny. And the game rewards you if it knows you're respecting it and you're putting the work in. You may not see it tomorrow. You may not see it tomorrow. It may not be next week. Uh, but the game, it knows. And anytime I'm around, and kids will make fun of me, and then they'll go 0 for 4 with 4 punches. And I'll go, the game knows, man. It knows. You better respect it. And they'll show up 20 minutes early for batting practice, and they'll get their hacks in. They'll get it in right. And, they'll get a knock their first at bat. You know how it is. Some guys, they need confidence to hit, and some guys need to hit to get confidence. And after the game, I'll go, look, the game knew that you respected it, and you put in some extra work, and you trusted it, and it rewarded you. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen a high school kid that put in good, proper work not get rewarded for that. If you want to be a good high school player, you got to work more than everybody else, and you'll get results. At the pro level, you better be good from the get go, and you better make adjustments along the way. But at the high school level, anybody can be a player if you're willing to respect the game and put in the work, and there's substance to what you're doing, and you're doing it right. You can be a very successful player. I believe that with all my heart. I've seen it 1,000 times, where we'll keep a kid. I would keep a kid because in tryouts, he was a catcher. That was a big secret that I don't think anybody ever figured out. If you could throw the ball over the plate or you could catch, we're going to keep you because we need all those catchers to catch bullpens. And so you got a shot. And we kept a kid. We kept a kid because gosh, he had good spirit. And he wasn't like he was a catcher. And man, he would throw it to second base at tryouts and it bounced twice. And we went into the room and I was like, hey, I want to keep this little catcher. And every assistant coach just put their head down. And I went, no, I want to keep this guy. I said, he's got a good spirit about him. He likes being here. And that kid led us to the state tournament. He caught every inning of every game his senior year. And because we had two other catchers, and both of them went. One of them went down our very first scrimmage in his first at bat, and the other catcher, he was a kid he could catch, but we had pretty good pitching. He couldn't catch our good pitching, so we rolled with one catcher for gosh, I think it was 42 games. He caught every inning of 42 games in high school, and never complained. And he was a stud. And I know the game was like rewarding him for his 3 years of work because he'd jump back and he'd catch those guys. When he was a freshman, he couldn't catch them, and he had ejecto mitt, it'd pop out, and he'd chase it down and give it back to him and run back and get behind the plate. And I think it rewarded him because he stayed with it, and he was always good to the game, and he brought energy, and the effort was there, and it rewarded him with a fantastic senior year.
You never know what can transpire from year to year from not only a physical development, but also a mental development. And I don't know who coined the phrase because I know it's an older phrase, but you want to be an energizer bunny. You don't want to be a energy vampire.
Right.
And unfortunately, especially I'm sure you've seen at the high school level, there are so many energy vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not even be within your team. There's people in the stands, there's people going throughout the halls, and they're like, oh, okay, and they're really getting in their head. And I know you have I believe it's either a poster or some type of quote within your office, and it says the purpose of high school sports isn't earning scholarships, it's becoming a better person, teammate, and communicator while enjoying being a teenager.
Yep.
I know those are very, very simple words, but I know it has a very, very deep meaning, not only for you and how you coach, but also probably your players. Within that, especially when at the high school level, everyone does kind of want to go and get those scholarships and things like that. But as you said, the game knows. And And when the game knows, the game is not going to give you opportunities that you're not meant for.
Right.
So how do you kind of describe that to your guys and let them know if you're ready for it, it's going to be yours. If you're not, oh well.
um, there's a guy. There was a guy, and his name was Viktor Frankl, and he writes a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And, they went back and looked at every book that's ever been written. And this is one of the top 10 books in the history of mankind. And in this book, long story short, he's a Jewish psychologist, and he's put in a concentration camp, and he notices when people don't have anything to live for, they die. And, his wife was in another camp, and he thought about her every minute of every day. And he realized when you have something to live for, you live. And if you don't have anything to live for, and we've all seen that where like grandpa dies on Friday and grandma's so heartbroken she dies on Sunday. But I think what's happening now and in society now, everybody wants a shortcut, and they want if my neighbor buys a boat, I want a boat, even if it means I go in debt. And you're seeing it in baseball that the identity has become how many offers you get, or do you have the $75, $80 bolt batting gloves? I got to have a shin guard in case I foul a ball. I see kids wear shin guards that they have no shot of fouling anything off their ankle, but they wear a pink shin guard because it looks cool, and they wear an elbow guard in case they get hit, but yet they're diving out of the way so they won't get hit. I hold 2 records to this day at my high school, and it's fielding percentage. I never made an error in high school, and I was a catcher, first baseman. And the other one is hit by pitch. If they threw the ball at me, I thought that was a gift because now I don't have to hit this guy. I'm just going to stand here. I was that guy, just stand there and wear it in the ribs and then go to first. I didn't know I was supposed to be upset, and I didn't know what macho meant. But It's a chase and then it's a race. And I've seen kids finish their career at the high school level, and the kids are smiling because they've had such a good time, and the mom and dad are crying because they don't get to do it anymore, and it's become their identity, not their sons. And if you go back and you look when you were a player, every team I was on, I can remember like doing good things, but I can remember who my teammates were, and I can remember practices, and people are remembered by how good of a teammate they are. In this town, um, this is pretty cool. The mayor of this town, the sheriff of this town, our city manager in this town were all high school teammates of mine. And there's a guy that he's a president of a bank in town, and he was the worst teammate ever. And I won't even drive by that bank, much less put money in it. Okay, but I don't remember what his stats were. But man, I remembered how he would like cheat in sprints, and he dodged the breaking ball machine. He wouldn't get in there and get his cuts in, and he'd goof around when in bunting drills, and then he couldn't do it in the game. And um, every great player that I've been around, they found joy. There was always joy, and I remember in 2010 with the 18U national team, we had Francisco Lindor was our shortstop. And I remember sitting on the bus and he'd sit behind me and I'd listen to him talk to guys. And he was always laughing and he was always smiling when he was on the field. And I told our pitching coach, I said, he's going to make a lot of money someday because guys that smile, fans love them and they want them around and they end up getting big contracts because the fans demand it. And well, Francisco Lindor is a multimillionaire playing shortstop in New York for the Mets, and he's one of the best human beings ever. And I think of guys like Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. is the best baseball player I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing he can't do. He's legendary in Texas because in Texas they play their state championship 2 out of 3, and he pitched the first game. And a lot of people don't realize Bobby Witt Jr. was 97 miles an hour off the mound, and he was the winning pitcher in the first game. And in the second game, I think he went 5 for 5 with 2 home runs and drove in all the runs. And they won the state championship, and he legit won the state championship by himself. And that dude, he's the fastest guy in baseball. He can hit home runs. He's got, a hand cannon. His glove is phenomenal. He's the best baseball player I've ever seen. But he's always smiling. He's happy. He loves the fans and the fans love him. And we were like, man, I was just like, man, I wish I could have hair like that. It's got that flow coming out the back. I said, that dude's going to make a lot of money.
No, is it one of those things with being around so many guys like that at the Team USA trials and being able to coach them individually? Is it one of those things that really sticks out where you're like, okay, automatically you kind of have an idea, okay, yeah, this guy's going to make a lot of money or this guy's going to fizzle out? Or is it sometimes where would you say you're more surprised more often than not, or is it pretty much the writing on the wall when those guys get to you up there?
Well, I've been doing it. There's a bunch of us. There's a core group of scouts and guys that have been with USA Baseball for 20 plus years. And, you know, you can see it. A national team player looks different. And I know everybody's like, whoa, this guy, he's the best player I ever coached. He's a national team kid. And you watch him and he's terrible in the dugout. He can't get along. He won't help carry equipment. The character is only there when the coach is standing in front of him. And then you watch another guy and you can see sincere love. And there's a big difference in national team guys. They do things naturally. It's very organic. They're curious. They love being coached. I think of what happens a lot of times, especially at the youth level, the high school level, their high school coaches are afraid to coach them because they're afraid they'll mess them up. But they love being coached and they're emotionally intelligent, great players. They don't throw helmets. You go, hey, don't throw a helmet, and they never do it. They have that adjustability piece with their game where, they're starving for you to coach them, and you give them one little nugget and they go out and do it. And then that's how they do it for the rest of their life. And great players love being around great players. That's kind of That's something I always notice, that great players, they're not intimidated. They're not trying to show another guy up. They love great players because it kind of challenges them. They love the process. They don't have to do as much at practice. There's this myth that, like, a Francisco Lindor, he could take ground balls all day, and I've hit him ground balls for an hour. But Francisco Lindor, he can go out and take 3 or 4 ground balls, and he's good to go. Because every time he takes a ground ball, it's very intentional. He's working on his glove angle or his footwork. And other kids, the average player goes out and he'll take 100 ground balls and do it 100 ground balls wrong and thinks, he got better. Average players, when you coach them, they're offended. They get very defensive. Average players, they get upset and throw a helmet because they want you to know. I'm convinced that guys, they outwardly show emotion to show everybody else they're upset that they failed. Great players, when they fail, and I've seen this, great players, when they fail, they come in the dugout, they put the helmet up, they put the bat, and they go like sit, and they'll stare at the ground, and they get real quiet. And I thought, when I first saw that, I thought they were like moping, or they were like trying to, in their mind, rationalize what happened. Um, that's not what is happening at all. Great players, when they fail, they get quiet because in their mind, they're reflecting and they're fixing and they're making adjustments. They don't have to go out and field a ground ball to make an adjustment. They can just, you'll see them like moving their hand and doing air reps, or you'll see the right fielder standing there like he's holding a bat when they're making a pitching change. They don't need that. They can do it in their mind. Their minds are super powerful and their character's extremely high. And if I've had one, I've had 50, and I've had good coaches. You picked the wrong guy. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We picked the right guy. Now, we don't always win the gold medal, but we don't miss very often on players. And we've left some famous players off teams. And, I was sitting at the table and this guy goes, "We've got to cut Trout." And I went, "I agree 100%. He's high school shortstop from New Jersey that didn't play a lot of summer ball, so it was rough looking, and we cut him. Well, we cut Mike Trout, the 17-year-old kid from New Jersey. We didn't cut Mike Trout, the guy that won 3 MVPs in a row and all that. We didn't cut that guy. We cut the kid, Mike Trout, because he wasn't ready for it. And I always said I'd cut my mom off a national team if it meant a gold medal. You got to leave your heart in a van when you go scout stuff like that. And you got to scout what you see, not what you want to see.
And the character piece is a really big piece of that. And if they're showing that outwardly, it's one of those things where, okay, yeah, you might be this talented, but I know down the road this is going to affect us in some way, shape, or form. And it's not just going to affect you on the field; it's going to affect everyone around you because we feed off of everyone. Because I know one of the pillars. I don't know if there's anything specifically within kind of Team USA baseball in general, but the importance on family and being able to kind of use that as a growth mindset and being able to reflect on what everyone's going through and different things like that. I think there's something that you said, and I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, but I know one of the videos that always sticks out to me is you hitting the top inside part of the baseball
Yeah.
and you in the cage. And I just try to reflect on that in my head as a pitcher. And I'm just so confused on how that understanding of being able to get through the baseball and get through the baseball with power. It might just be my pitching mind at work, but can you kind of describe that a little bit and why you have had a lot of success with that as a verbal cue for a lot of your guys?
I think part of coaching is tricking. You're a magician, you're a doctor who writes prescriptions, things like that. And if you're trying to hit the top inside part of the baseball, um, you're going to stay on the ball. You're going to keep the barrel over the plate and in the zone longer. And some people may disagree, but if you're super quick trying to hit the top inside part of the ball, if I said, if I had a group right here in batting practice and I said, hit the top inside part of the ball, they would hear hit the ball the other way. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, you have to have a quick bat. And a lot of times when kids launch the bat, they can get long, the barrel drags, it's slow, it's pushy. But if you're thinking top inside part of the baseball, and I can add to it and go hit the top inside part of the baseball and pull it. Well, now they're super quick. So they've generated bat speed, which if they get barrel contact is going to be exit velocity. That's why you see big leaguers. Everybody's like, oh, they're bigger and stronger. There are a lot of normal looking big leaguers who, if they walked down the sidewalk and didn't have a uniform on, you wouldn't even know they're big leaguers. But they have this quickness when they swing the bat. And if I hear a coach go, hey, be quick, I'm like, oh my gosh, my blood brother, my soulmate, baseball, because being quick, that's how you hit. And if you don't say keep the barrel in the zone, keep your head still, hit the top inside part of the ball, but be quick. That's when you see those big leaguers. It looks like they're barely swinging and the ball's going 400 feet. That's what's happening. And a long time ago, I got to go to Cleveland and watch, at the time, the Indians play the Red Sox in the playoffs. And we got there in the morning because we were meeting one of the coaches. And he was like, just come to the stadium. We'll eat breakfast in the stadium and we'll hang out and you can watch pregame and batting practice. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, we get there and we're walking down the hall and I can hear somebody hitting in the cage. It's 8:00 in the morning. And I kind of stopped and I looked in. It was Manny Ramirez. And he's just wearing it out. And this machine's set up on like 5,000 miles an hour because they're facing Josh Beckett that night. And he's just wearing it out. And we go eat breakfast and come back and he's still hitting. And I'm like, does he do? He goes, every day. He does that every day. And Manny Ramirez, everybody thinks he was a clown, but Manny Ramirez was such a good baseball player. He loves baseball, and he would get there early and get all his work in. And when everybody else rolled in later, he had all his work in. So he would clown around with them, and he was kind of a distraction to him because he'd been there since 8:00 in the morning. And if you hit the top inside part of the ball, it'll keep you from getting long. It'll keep you from getting around. It'll keep you from slicing the zone and pulling off the ball. And so that's always been my cue. Hit the top inside part of the ball. It like tricks them, but be quick.
There's so many stories of the very, very talented 1% within the game and how they go about their process. And it's just, you see so many things like that. When you kind of said someone who walks down the side of the road and you never know if they're a big leaguer or not, I think of Kyle Tucker just off the top of my head. And that swing is just so pure.
I think of
And
Bregman. I think of Alex. Breggy, when he was coming through trying to make national teams, and he made national team, he was a catcher. He was a catcher, second baseman. And I was like, it was different. And he doesn't know this, but he kind of changed, everybody. Like, I watch him, I observe, and he was the one where I was like, wow, grip, how you grip the bat's kind of overrated. It's kind of like your autograph. It's very personal. And Breggy get in and he had, he kind of still to this day, he did that. And the old camp trick was, hey, you're knocking knuckles, line your knocking knuckles up. And Breggy was like this and just lifting balls. And I was like, maybe I was wrong to teach everybody the same way. And because he's doing this and he's getting results. So that's kind of how that changed me. I stood there and watched him, was like, this little dude can play. But if you saw Alex Bregman walking down the sidewalk and he had like a jacket on, a pair of jeans, you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, that's one of the 750 freaks in the big leagues right now.
I don't know why it's a direct correlation for me, but when I think of Bregman now and I think of Tucker, and for some reason I just always think of young Kyle Schwarber, and obviously him coming up through the ranks as a catcher. Was that one of the things where deep down you knew that the hit tool was just out of the park, and but he would eventually kind of come out of just being a catcher, or is that something where you thought even in the big leagues he'd still be a catcher?
I think Breggy had the body type and he got kind of shoved into a cubicle called catcher. And but his athleticism was off the charts. And, he would go out. He was also an infielder and he would take ground balls. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at his hands. His hands play. And his feet and his hands were always in sync. So you're like, wow, we got to have a catcher. But he's such a good infielder, and I, I he could have been a catcher. He could catch in the big leagues. He could have been Biggio, where he was a catcher and they move him out and he's an all-star at two different positions. He's just a baseball player and he's really good at it. And bless LSU for letting him play in the infield, and because he's money, he's steady, and I'll be honest with you, live in person, I've never seen Bregman make a throwing error. Like he'll spin and come out of it and he knows where he's throwing it and he doesn't make throwing errors. And as a scout for USA, I've seen hundreds of guys that can glove it and then they throw it and they can't throw it or make it go where they want it to go. And you're like, wow, okay, bases loaded, Japan, bottom of the fifth, he can make the play, and then he's going to throw it in the fourth row, and we're going to lose because he can't throw. So I've seen that a million times too. But yeah, it's you see guys like that, and Kyle Tucker. I saw him in Jupiter, Florida, in a East Champs game, and he's playing for one of those really cool travel teams, and he's playing left field. And I'll be honest with you, in Jupiter, the games used to start at 8 a.m. and they would go until 11 o'clock at night. And I got tired of sitting in the golf cart. I took my notebook. I was trying to hide, and I walked down the left field line, and they hit a ball, and it was foul. And I'm like watching it go foul, and all of a sudden Kyle Tucker's standing next to me and makes the catch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how'd you catch that? He goes, I got a good jump on it. I got a good jump on it. And so I started watching him, and I noticed him do things like he doesn't look like he can run, but he can run. He didn't look like he could, he looked like his bat was long, and then all of a sudden he's barreling everything, and he's having, 8 pitch at bats every time he comes to the plate and then gets a hit. Like, you learn, and scouting's one of those things. There's a reason why scouts are 65 years old. It's because they've seen a lot and they can compare and it kind of jumps out. If you've seen the movie, Clear the Mechanism, and which is one of the greatest examples. Kevin Costner, he's playing Billy Chapel and he's up on the mound, for the love of the game, and he's on the mound and he'd go, okay, clear the mechanism. And everything gets blurry except the catcher and the hitter. And like, if you scout enough, you can see it. It like jumps at you. There's a difference between a really good player and a national team player, and you can see it.
You've been around a lot of guys who have had all these different types of paths within Team USA and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there a certain story that's a very, very feel-good story within your mind of a certain player that you have always wanted to talk about and give it the light of day, of either a guy in the big leagues, of a guy that maybe just didn't quite make it, but is really resonates with you and how you go about your business now as a coach?
It's a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. And I've talked about this guy before. He's one of my favorite human beings. Like in my lifetime, he's one of my favorite human beings. And his name's Chaffin. And Chaffin was trying to make the national team in like 96, 97. And he's a Utah kid. He's going to go on, and this is incredible. He's going to go on. He's going to go to Oregon State, and he's going to play with. You remember when Oregon State was winning national title? They just rolled people, and you're like, Oregon State. Chaffin started as a freshman at third base. He's started as a sophomore at shortstop. He started at second base as a junior. He got drafted, turned it down, and he started at first base as a senior. He ran with his feet pointed out, but he was fast. And he could throw. He had plus arm strength, but he never showed it off unless he had to. And he was always in the right place. I can remember a kid stealing third, and he was playing short in trials. And Chaffin just, as soon as the guy started to steal, Chaffin just vacated and he's running toward the foul line, and the catcher throws it, and Chaffin is probably 15 feet in the outfield and catches it in the air. Like if he's not standing there, that guy scores easily. But here's the story on Chaffin. Chaffin comes into training camp, and we're in the hotel, the Embassy Suites, off Harrison Boulevard, in between Raleigh and Cary. And, you have breakfast in a big banquet room, and they lay the buffet out and guys eat and all that kind of stuff. And you're talking, and, Chavin's just bouncing. And he wants to make the team, but he's just happy to be there around other great players. He wasn't satisfied. He was just he's a happy human being. And his dad and his grandfather were driving cross country to see him. And I think it was in Nebraska. Chavin's grandfather had a heart attack, passed away. So I usually pick out like 2 or 3 of these guys and try to build a relationship with them. So this is probably on Thursday, and we're going to break camp on Saturday. And I'm pulling for Chaffin. I want him to make the team because he's such a good kid and he can do so many things. And his grandfather passed away. So the director goes, Butch, will you go get Chaffin and will you come in here with me? So the director is sitting in a chair, and there's a chair like in front of him facing him. And he goes, Chaffin, have a seat. And Chaffin could tell something's not right. So I'm standing like next to him. I put my hand on his back, and I'm like patting him on the back, rubbing him like I would my kids if they were sick or something like that. And he goes, Chaffin, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, your grandfather passed away. He was driving here and he passed away. And Chaffin kind of put his head down, and he wanted to cry, and he had tears in his eyes. And the director goes, listen, we're going to go ahead and make arrangements so you can go back. And Chaffin snaps his head up and he goes, I'm not going back. My grandfather want me to be here. And the director's like, take some time. And he goes, I don't need any time. I know exactly what my grandpa would want. So I'm like patting him. I'm like beating on him. I'm like tearing up too. And so he leaves the meeting, and the director goes, Butch, keep an eye on him. And I said, I got it. And so I'm watching him and stuff like that. And we go into our meeting, the scout meeting and the coaches meeting. And, we're talking about it. And I'm like, listen, I love the kid, but don't feel sorry for him. He can't take a spot on this team if he hasn't earned it. And I went to check on him, and I go, hey, Chaffin, is there any position you can't play? And he goes, no. And I go, have you ever caught? And he goes, Coach, I catch all the time. And I'm like, what? And I run back down to the meeting, and I'm like, guys, we're looking for like the emergency catcher, the guy that's never going to catch, but if he has to, he can catch elite pitching. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah. They go, okay, we're starting him in the final red and blue scrimmage tomorrow night. He's going to catch, and he's going to catch Jamison Tyon. And so they're like, Butch, take him in the bullpen, set the machine up, see if he can catch. And he's down there catching. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at the big picture. He can catch a ball. Tyon's warming up, and he's catching him, and it's good. And he's tossing it back, and he knows which direction the pitcher's mound is and all that stuff. And, so we get in the red and blue scrimmage, and he goes behind the plate, threw a guy out. He's catching everything. He's boxing stuff, framing it up. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Well, he was scheduled to catch Tyon. Tyon threw 4 innings. And after the 4 innings, Chaffin was coming out. And the last out is a strikeout, and Chaffin gets it, and he flips the ball to the mound. He sprints into the dugout, and he's sitting up on the upper bench, and he hasn't taken the mask off. And I was at the other end of the dugout, and I come walking down, and I'm going to tell him what a great job. And I put my hands on the shin guards, and he's dying laughing. And I'm like, what? And he goes, Coach, I've never caught before in my life. And he goes out and catches like the first pick in the draft. He goes out and catches a 6'6", 17-year-old that's 94, 97 with a power slider and a plus change, and he makes it look easy. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I've never caught before in my life. I said, how'd you know how to do all that stuff? And he goes, Coach, when you play the infield, you stare at the catcher the whole game. He said, I just did what I've seen the other guys do. He made that team. He wasn't a starter. I think he went 3 for 5 coming off the bench. They let him catch a couple innings. He played all over the field as a defensive replacement. And now he lives in the Pacific Northwest and he's a coach. And I see him at the national convention every year, and he comes up and just like bear hugs me. And I'm like, boy, you still amaze me. I still tell that story. And he's just a great, humble kid. He played a couple years in the Mariners organization, and he's just a great human being. But he's the kind of guy, man, that guy's a national hero, and nobody knows his name. And we've had a ton of kids like that. They played their role. They were selfless and unselfish. And, that's the beauty of the national team. You pick 9 starters, you pick a 4th outfielder, you pick a utility guy. One of those outfielders has to be a two-way. You pick a backup catcher and somebody that has to catch in a pinch. You just don't pick the 20 best guys. It doesn't work like that.
I'm sure there's so many different stories that come to mind when you think of those different types of things.
Yeah.
And do you ever wish that some of those stories and some of those people that you were able to impact, like their stories were said a little bit more often than just the guys who were like, oh yeah, this guy was this pick in the draft and this was this guy's pick in the draft. But all those different stories of all those different guys at camp, some of those have always been overshadowed and they've never been spoken about. Do you think there would ever be a way for those stories to kind of be transcribed into like a documentary or something like that, maybe down the road eventually?
I think that'd be cool, but see, that's kind of the problem. In today's society, everybody's got to be the star and everybody's got to be the hero. If you talk to those guys, they were like, I was just playing baseball with my friends. You don't have to do that. And everybody plays a role. And, it's like the garbage guy. You don't miss a garbage guy till he never picks up your trash. If your trash cans are always full, that guy's not trying to be a hero. He's just trying to do his job. And, there's so many people in society that they just wake up and they got cruddy jobs and they do them so well. And I've tried to, that's one of my favorite things is seeing somebody that has a cruddy job and man, they love doing it and they whistle and they smile and they just get it done. And society just passes them by because they're not beating on their chest and bat flipping. Look at me. They're just doing their job. And we've had so many kids come through USA Baseball that, man, they were just doing their job and they were trying to help their teammates out and help get the win. And, I've said this a million times. I wish everybody could wear USA across their chest. And then I go, but everybody doesn't deserve to wear it. And that sounds arrogant and conceited. I really think I moved up in USA Baseball because I sat and I did my job. And I thought, man, if I do this job, my first year with USA Baseball, I caught bullpens and I sat in the chair during the game and I gave the umpires balls and I ran down foul balls that were inside the field. And I thought, man, I'm going to be the best at this and I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And I never realized that people saw me being really good at a cruddy job. And, 3 years after I joined USA Baseball in camp, they fire the pitching coach and the director, he pulls me aside and goes, you want to be the pitching coach? And I'm telling you, I got chills. Like my I felt funny. It was surreal. It was like I was over there watching me being asked, and it was bizarre. And I said, 100%, absolutely. And they were like, well, call your wife, make sure. And I was like, she's going to say yes. And he goes, well, I'll give you an hour. And I went, I don't need an hour. Yes. And 2 days later, we go on the longest tour in the history of USA Baseball with 18U. We went to Washington, D.C. and busted D.C., and then we busted New York, and we were in New York for 2 weeks, and we flew to Green Bay, and we played And from Green Bay, we flew to Minnesota and got on a bus, and we played every night and worked our way all the way up through Minnesota into Canada and played for a world championship. And I've never taken 1 second for granted with USA Baseball. And every year I'll go, hey, don't forget me. I want to scout. I want to work an event. And they're like, Butch, you've been doing this for over 20 years. We're not forgetting you. And I'm like, I don't care what it is. I'll go sit in Arizona and it's 115 in Arizona on a backfield and I'm scouting bad baseball. And I'm thinking, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm getting to do this for my country. My dad, he was a soldier and he was on the beach at Normandy the night before putting charges out, and there were 83 guys in his unit, and 80 of them got killed, and he made it off. And I always wanted to be a Marine, and I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've been type 1 diabetic forever. And I even tried to pull it off to where, I tried to take my physical, and they were like, you're diabetic. And I went, I know. And they went, well, you can't be a Marine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it crushed me. I thought I could fake it and get through. And then USA Baseball, it found me. And this is a way that I can honor my father and serve my country. And I'm very serious about it. And we laugh and we have more fun than we should be allowed, but it's serious business because we want to get it right. We want to pick the right people to represent our country. And there are 750 big leaguers and there are 80 national team kids each year. So it's harder to be on a national team than it is to play in the big leagues, if you look at it like that. And we take it very serious, very serious. And the guys that I work with and scout with, they're real good at it. And we don't miss. We miss, but we don't miss a lot because we know how important it is. And and I've always said this, USA Baseball is the greatest travel team on the planet. And you can't buy your way onto it. And it's a gold medal business, and we're trying to win that gold medal. And I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I've had to dig silver medals out of a trash can and go, take this, keep it. Your kids will want this in 20 years. And they're like, no, we came here for gold and we got silver. And I'm like, just take the medal and store it. You'll want it later on.
Within all that, I don't know if it is a pillar within once you kind of step into Team USA and wear the stars and stripes on your own. One of the things that I think is one of the most beautiful things in college baseball is every first day on campus, Coach Tim Corbin teaches them how to stand for the flag
Yeah.
and the importance on how to do that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys, as Team USA in general, do you guys preach that? Or is that just something that Tim kind of went about on his own and has just made it his own and has now had so many coaches under him kind of follow suit within that? Because I think that's one of the most beautiful things that he's ever done.
We've been doing it forever, and Corbs loves his country, and there's no denying that. And he pays tribute to it all the time. They wear the military. They were the first ones that wore military uniforms, and he insists on that. That's part of the discipline and the reverence that you need to show. And like when we would play Japan, we're in Taiwan, we play Japan. Before they take the field, they all line up on the top step of the dugout. They take their hats off and they bow to the field. They're showing reverence to the game, and that's part of that respect. And I remember first time I saw it, Japan bowed to the field and their head coach kind of looked at our dugout. And I remember like taking my hat off, like, that was awesome. What you did was awesome. But, in the World Baseball Classic, I can tell guys that were on youth, the 12s, the 15s, the 18s national teams by the way they stand. And I've taught a lot of those guys how to stand for the anthem, and you're like, oh, put your hand on your heart. Well, you put your hand on your heart, but your hat goes over your shoulder. It's little things like that. It's where your left hand goes behind your belt and how you make a fist and how you don't move. You pick out a star and you stare at the star, and there's so much symbolism. And I said, I tell them, they play that anthem, they hit that first note, you stick your chin up, because you're the baddest team on the planet, and you're from the United States of America, and you're representing the greatest country on the planet. And sure, we have our problems, but we are the greatest. There's a reason why everybody wants to come to the United States. Nobody's going, hey, let's go to Switzerland. Uh, let's go to Chinese Taipei. Nobody's like, going to those countries. Everybody wants to come to the United States because we have the best of the best and our people are the best. And we pick these teams, and other countries kind of break the rules. I guess you could say they skirt the rules. They'll pick their team and they'll practice for a month and then they'll come play. We pick our team, and 4 days later, we're in a foreign country. So as soon as they get to us and step off the bus, we're trying to beat them over the head with patriotism, to give a better cause, to bring them together, team first, team last mentality. And when we do that, we're looking for skill, but we're looking for attitude, toughness, maturity. Um, and it'll jump out at you if you kind of squint your eyes. You can start seeing the toughness, the attitude in a positive way. A never give up attitude. As long as you have breath in your body and outs on the scoreboard, we got a shot. And we don't always win gold medals, but man, our teams are always tough and they're mature. They have emotional intelligence. Failure is part of it, and they understand that. So we start beating them over the head with patriotism. Because if you're not a patriot, that's why it was so cool. This World Baseball Classic, you see Aaron Judge, recruiting people and guys going, heck yeah, I want to play on that team. Paul Skeens, I don't care what the Pirates say. I'll throw every game. I don't care. Bryce Harper, first time I met Bryce Harper, he was 16 years old trying to make the 18U team. And you could tell, God, the kid was unbelievable. And, when he came up, he'd slide and have a cleat up. It was like Ty Cobb throwback. And people were like, what a jerk, what a jerk. Bryce Harper's one of the best human beings on the planet. And he's so misunderstood. And now he's a 33-year-old dad with 3 kids. And I'm so proud of him, just how he's matured and how he's adjusted and the spokesman that he's become for the game. And, you see stuff like that and you're like, yeah, the anthem is a piece of it. That's an outward, that's an outward, like, people get to see them do the anthem. People don't get to see, um, you know, on purpose. Sometimes we'll put roommates together because we don't think they get along and we want to see if they can make that adjustment. And then you see them eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, sitting next to each other, calling each other roomie. And you're like, it's happening, it's happening. And, uh, you know, every chance we get, we tell stories. The Kevin Kai story. I tell everybody that story that's in USA Baseball. This is a great baseball player that accepted his role and relished at it. He was really good at it. And, you know, the anthem is just like an external show, but it's highly significant. I'm passionate about that, Ron.
I I figured that would somehow hit some heartstrings, and
Absolutely.
it was one of those things. The first time I saw Coach Corbin do that, and go about it in that way, it was one of those things where I just could see the reverence, and even though that was never something directly where I was like, okay, I'd like to go serve my country in that way. I knew there was different ways that I could serve my country, and so even even though if I'm the only guy on the line, and I was in college and was able to do it in that way, and because of the people that I saw do it, and because I know the importance behind it, it meant a lot to me. And within that, there's all of us as coaches. We all have a Mount Rushmore. Each and every one of us have some type of Mount Rushmore. Myself being a little bit a younger guy, 4 guys that I've always wanted to pick their brain. Obviously, I have the utmost respect for Coach Corbin. I have the utmost respect for Coach Bianco and the stories that he's able to tell from all the things that he learned from Skip. 3 is going to surprise a lot of people. Being an Iowa guy, I have the utmost respect for Coach Heller, and I would say definitely in the 4, Coach Godwin and how he goes about his business is just so impactful as well. All of us have that Mount Rushmore in our opinion. from as many people as you've been able to touch and as many people as have you been able to interact with, what would you say your Mount Rushmore is?
Oh man. My Mount Rushmore would have 100 people on it. I can't. I, I think it would be disrespectful without being disrespectful, but you name Corbs is one of the greatest human beings on the planet. And you talk about attention to detail guy. Dan McDonald at Louisville. I've gotten close with him. Coach Esker at Stanford is just a heck of a human being. Forbes at North Carolina, that guy is self-made, and you can see the passion he has for his players. There's so many of them. My Necton group, I have heroes that are 30 years younger than I am. And I'm like, gosh, man, that guy's the right stuff. And just so many guys, friends. Adam Mosley at Hoover High School. He and Sheets are probably my two best friends. And they have given me some guidance, and they're so intelligent that Chuck Box. Um, Gosh, those guys are so intelligent. I feel so dumb sometimes when I listen to them talk about stuff. I just like sitting in the corner and listening to it. And they'll look at me every now and then and go, "What do you got?" And I'll say something, and Sheets will go, "That's freaking genius." And I'll go, "No, it's really not, but I appreciate you saying that." Um, just, all coaches who have the guts to do it right. That's my Mount Rushmore.
I don't think there was a better way to answer that question. I think it was just based off of how they go about their business and being able to see them at the highest level, at least within college baseball, and what they've been able to do with their programs. I think that's what's always stuck out to me. Recently, obviously, um, Coach Casey, I've kind of gotten into a little bit more of kind of his teachings and things like that, and that one sticks out to me a little bit more than it did. Coach Gilmore obviously is one of the most respected to ever do it,
100%.
and so just being able to kind of reflect and go back on those different types of stories and understand that all those interactions have got them into some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I
Within,
think if
oh, go ahead.
30 years ago, if you would ask me my Mount Rushmore, it would have been the grandfathers of college baseball, who I was very fortunate to meet and go to camp for some of them. I think the best college baseball coach ever was Augie Garrido. And I used to go, I was from California, born in California, and go to, Cal State Fullerton baseball camp. He'd be there. And I didn't realize I was in the presence of greatness. Coach Brock at Arizona State, Coach Gustafson at Texas, Coach Frazier at Miami, Coach Polk at Mississippi State. Those are the daddies, the granddaddies of college baseball. And we should have statues of those guys all over the place.
I'm just fortunate enough that we still have so many amazing coaches within kind of
Absolutely.
the confines of college baseball. And even though some of them are probably getting a little bit closer to that retirement age, I mean, you have guys coming up, and it's just awesome to be able to see that passing of the torch. One guy that I really, really look up to is Coach Mead over at Troy. I think he's doing an incredible job, and he's doing it in the most, I think, of
Skylar Mead is one of the best human beings on the planet. And every day when he goes to bed, he's gotten the most out of that day. And, Corbs talks about comedic timing and your sense of humor. Skylar Mead's got that. He's having fun. He's a smiler. He's not afraid to show emotion. What a great young coach. I'm so proud of him and so happy for him.
he just seems like he's one of those guys who's played at the College World Series level. And if you look back, if you're all about the statistics and things like that, his fastball didn't overpower you. He knew how to pitch, and that's very apparent. He's done a great job with every program he's ever been with. He's known how to win since day one in some way, shape, or form. And every interview that he ever has is any of his players look at him and they're like, yeah, he's going to push you harder than anyone you've ever met. But at the same time, he's going to love you more than anyone that you've ever met as well.
You
And
know,
the more that,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. But the more that I think about it within that is like, that's the true meaning of why we do what we do.
No,
And,
no doubt.
and being able to have this conversation with you respectfully, it's truly a blessing. Being able to learn from you, being able to soak in as much information as I've been able to. These different stories, they mean a ton to me. I think
You
it's
know,
going to be one of those things where even down the road we're going to have a very good relationship, and I'm going to cherish every moment of that. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate it. I was just going to say, you know, Murray State makes it to Omaha, and Dan Skirk is their coach. Well, Dan Skirk is a good guy, and that's a prime example of the game knows. You know, Dan Skirk he's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and he's a younger coach, and he was an infield coach at Walter State, and he gets the Murray State job, and he got the Murray State job because nobody else wanted it. And we're sitting on the bus. He does, a couple of events with USA, and he was my bus partner. We sat next to each other, and he was like, "Man, we don't even have a trainer." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, we can't find a trainer that wants to move to Murray, Kentucky for $20,000 a year." And I said, "Well, who's the trainer?" And he goes, "Well, I know how to tape ankles, and we got Band-Aids." This is the year before they go to Omaha. And he's talking about like our outfield padding has so many holes in it that it's going to probably cost $1,000 in duct tape just to tape them all up. And I'm like, whatever. And he goes, no. He said, I tell the guys, if you have a great pair of pants, bring them because that's what we wear in the fall to practice in. He couldn't even give them practice pants. And they're wearing old cotton t-shirts, and their budget is like a bad high school budget. And he's pinching pennies and trying to having car washes to buy balls and stuff like that. And that guy makes it to Omaha. Well, here's the thing. Dan Skirk has always been a good coach. And the game was like, let's shine the light on that guy. That guy's been just busting it for years, pinching pennies. And, Dan is a God-fearing man with a great sense of humor, and I love his energy, and I love being around him. And the game said, "Hey, man, Murray State gets to go to Omaha because Dan Skirk has paid his dues, and it's time. It's his turn. Let's put the spotlight on him." And he gets to go to Omaha. They redo the stadium. They give him a raise. They get him a trainer. He can afford practice pants because he's getting like deals because he was in Omaha. But yeah, that's Dan Skirka, Skylar Mead. Those are great young coaches that they're the next generation. And I'm so happy, to call both of them friends. And I'm so proud of them because, they do it the old school way. They get sweaty and dirty and they'll hit a fungo and throw BP and, they'll rake the field and tamp the mound and drag it. They know how to do all that stuff. And, they never had a plan on how to get there. They were just always where they were, giving it all they got.
And as you said, the game rewards those types of things.
100%.
And I think one of the last things that I've been doing with my guests that I've kind of felt called to do as of late. Is it okay if I pray for you?
Absolutely.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together and being able to really just soak in all of this information that Coach Chaffin and myself have been able to share with one another. Thank you for the wisdom that you've blessed upon him. Thank you for the relationships that you have given him. Thank you for all these different things that may be on a surface level from the grand existence of our lives seem minute, but from a coaching lens, they're so powerful. They're so beautiful. And we truly need to just thank you for all these gifts and talents. Thank you for his Necktie group, and hopefully everyone that's listening to this podcast is able to make a necktie group of their own and understand the real significance of having different coaches in their inner circles and being there for one another more than just, hey, I'm here for you as a coach. I'm here for you as a family. And that's something that's missed now within our society is no one wants to say the word I love you. And when we use that word I love you, it needs to hold a lot of weight. And it's not just a filler word, it's a word that means so much to not only myself, Coach Chaffin, but also just everyone that's listening as well. Hopefully, everyone's family on the other end of this call is doing fantastic. And even if there are some sort of hardships in the game of baseball, obviously the game knows, as we've heard multiple times today, but also just life knows that there's always going to be that time to rebound, and it's how you go about those different types of situations. And at the end of the day, I'm just incredibly blessed to have this platform to be able to not only share information with one another, but also just praise your name and give you the respect that you deserve, because at times I did not do the best at this. And now that I'm able to do it, I greatly appreciate your love, and I appreciate your support as well. In your name, amen.
That's awesome. Thanks for being brave enough to do that.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a conviction ever since, like, I think it was episode 5 in some way, shape, or form. If it was someone who needed it or something like that, and something resonated with me, it, I just feel like I've always been a different individual. And so I want to go about these things and be my own self. And hopefully through this conversation, you've been able to tell, like, I do beat to my own drum, but at the same time, there's a respect factor that I not only have for my guests, but also just the game in general. And that's how I want to live my life. I don't want to ever have any regrets. I want to live it to the fullest, but I want to live it to the fullest from the way that I feel like I should live it, and that God has given me that opportunity to live it in that way.
100%. 100%. Lamentations 3:25. God is good to those who seek him. So, you know, I haven't always been that guy, but you know, it's amazing how when you turn to that, how good things happen to you. It gives you peace of mind, and just thanks for having the courage and being brave enough to do that.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and I'm glad that I was able to take that moment of silence and be able to reflect with you as well. And I kind of want to wrap this up with just a sincere gratitude. Everything that you've given to the game of baseball, everything that you've been able to give to a lot of coaches that are in this space, like, it doesn't go unnoticed. And I'm really big on being able to give people their roses while they're still able to smell them.
Yep.
And I think that was something that's always been on my heart, to be able to share that with whoever. And the game's better because we have people like you in it, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
I
and
appreciate.
and I just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. A lot of people say they love baseball, but the guys that really love baseball, they still love it when the game turns on them and it tests them and it's hard on them and they're struggling. If you can still love it when the game turns on you, you love baseball. And I see a lot of people, I see a lot of kids, they say they love baseball when things are going bad. They don't love baseball. And it's just like any relationship with your wife or whatever. You're still in love even when things aren't going good. And that's true love.
And true love has so many forms.
Sure.
It's how you interpret those forms.
Sure.
So, with that being said, what's the best way to get in contact with you, to be able to pick your brain, or something from a social media outlook? Is there something that works best for you?
Yeah, just Butch Baseball 29 on X, Twitter, whatever it's called this week. Um, I love Twitter. I think it was created for me, and I don't do anything but baseball stuff and funny stuff and a picture of my granddaughters every now and then. But yeah, just that's my social media. I don't do Facebook or any of the other ones. I love Twitter because the whole world can see it, and you can engage with a lot of people. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah, are there any closing remarks that you would like to share to the audience, or
no,
that we didn't?
Ryan, Ryan, by you doing this, you show your passion and your love, and you're good at it for our great game. And baseball, when it comes down to it, baseball is a game. Games are puzzles, and we're trying to solve the puzzle, and it's just a game. And I would really hope that win, lose, or draw when the game's over, um, you shake the other coach's hand, you show appreciation for playing against them in that game. And I always thought it was important for my guys, if even if we lost, for them to see me shake an umpire's hand or shake the other coach's hand, to put things in perspective. But it's such a great game. It is such a great game. It's been so good to me. And when I realized I didn't know it all and dropped my ego, it got even better. And that's when I think myself as a coach, that's when my coaching really took off. But I appreciate you letting me come on.
No, absolutely. Once again, truly a blessing. So, well, this was a amazing talk with the one and only Coach Butch Chaffin, and I'm truly blessed to have the opportunity. And with all that being said, this is your host, one and only Coach Ryan Vondercheck, and his very favorite co-host now for 3 episodes. We got Smiley himself, and at the end of the day, do not be afraid to be yourself. And at the end of the day, really find yourself and your true meaning in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
For sure.